Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're in Chapter 1 of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. We're starting from the very beginning of the book each Sunday, and we're going to be going chapter by chapter so that I can help you to understand the teachings of the Buddha and build a really nice foundation and framework in order to develop your life practice towards the attainment of enlightenment, where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. This particular chapter can be really helpful for you if you have been exposed to other teachings in the past, whether those are Christianity, Muslim teachings, Hindu, Jainism, Judaism, any particular teachings or no teachings at all. Even if you've learned Buddhist teachings in the past, now you're moving into studying with the words of the Buddha. So I'd like to welcome all of you to our class and invite you to ask any and all questions that you like as we go. If you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and you'd like to ask a question, you can just put that into the comment section of either Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions that you like as we go in our class today. I'm going to be sharing with you the very first chapter of this book, because in this first chapter, I wrote it for a specific reason, because I understood that people who would be coming to learn with me may be needing a bridge to move from where they are in their current understanding of teachings and moving into Buddhist teachings. And sometimes, depending on what we've been taught, we might feel like we're kind of turning our back on the teachings of Christianity or Jesus Christ himself, or the teachings of Prophet Muhammad and Muslim teachings or Hindu teachings or any other teachings that you might have been exposed to at different times. You might feel like perhaps by moving into the teachings of the Buddha, you might be turning your back on those individuals or those teachings or even your family upbringing and your traditions. But it's important to understand that moving into teachings like what you're learning in the Buddhist teachings and what you will be learning throughout this program, the way that I see it is it's more like a stepping stone. They're more like stairs that are leading to this ability for you to develop your life practice. And as you are learning and practicing throughout your life, you might have been exposed to various teachings throughout your life from various collection of teachings. You might have learned Christianity or Muslim teachings or Hinduism or Judaism or any other teachings, or maybe just grandma and grandpa and mom and dad teaching you along the way. Well, this is what is happening within each human being if we're paying attention to our life, is that we're evolving as human beings. And each one of these collection of teachings are helping us to evolve as a better and better human being. The way that I think about it is I think about it like if you were taking a college degree on marketing or management. You might have various professors that are teaching you about that specific topic. Maybe Professor A, B, C, and D. And as you're learning with all these different professors, they're all contributing something beneficial to your development and understanding of marketing or management. And it's not that Professor A is all right and everybody else is all wrong, or Professor C is all right and everyone else is wrong. But instead, what you're doing is you're gaining insight and wisdom from all these different professors to be able to collect up information and teachings that are going to help you in your career as a marketer or as a business manager. Well, the same thing is true as we evolve through life and we learn various teachings from different settings, that we're evolving as human beings. And you might have learned certain teachings like Christianity or Muslim teachings, or Hindu teachings, Judaism, or anything else. And as you've been evolving as an individual, you might have learned certain things in those teachings that really benefited your life. And now perhaps you're choosing to move into the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha are the natural laws of existence. These are the teachings that are going to help you awaken to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serenely content with joy. His teachings aren't based on belief. It's based on learning. It's based on independently verifying that they're true and then practicing those teachings so that you can transform the mind. He discovered these individual pollutions of the mind and how to actually eliminate them. I haven't seen any other teachings except for Gotama Buddha's where you can independently verify his teachings and you can see the truth for yourself that they're working as the condition of the mind is improving. Oftentimes what we're exposed to as we're growing up is believe, and something great's supposed to happen when you die. Well, the teachings of the Buddha aren't this way. It's about learning now, reflecting now, practicing now, and then seeing the results now in this life. The Buddha is a fully, perfectly enlightened Buddha, meaning his mind is fully awake to these natural laws of existence. But what's really interesting about our human history is these various teachers of Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad and others were awake to a certain degree to be able to tap into these same natural laws. And this is one of the reasons why we see a lot of commonalities among all the various traditions that are in the world. You can see where Jesus taught to love thy neighbor, and the Buddha taught loving kindness and compassion for all beings. You can see where Jesus taught that you reap what you sow. This is the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect, or action and result. Jesus Christ even said that I will come again, meaning I will be reborn. And we see in Prophet Muhammad's teachings, we see this discipline of 5 times a day of praying. This requires an enormous amount of inner discipline. And we see generosity being practiced, where there's a significant part of the teachings that involve generosity, including Jesus's teachings too. There's a certain aspect of generosity. There are so many similarities amongst the teachings, but yet they're also very uniquely different to each individual tradition and each individual teacher. But as you're starting to embark in this journey to learn the teachings of the Buddha and walk on the path to enlightenment, it's helpful to understand what I refer to as the universal teachings. These are teachings that you will see common across pretty much all traditions of teachings, and even grandma and grandpa and mom and dad's teachings as well. You'll see this commonality among all these various teachings. So I'm going to share with you what I refer to as the universal teachings of universal love for all beings, do no harm, and be a good moral person. And that's essentially the title of this first chapter, Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, Good Morals. And I'm going to share with you essentially why it would be wise to understand these particular teachings, how to actually apply them in your daily life and benefit you. And I'm going to also explain to you exactly what these teachings are so that you'll be able to then incorporate them as you're learning through the teachings of the Buddha and other traditions that you might have been exposed to. You'll see these commonalities as you go. So as I mentioned, as we go in our class today, feel free to ask any and all questions as I'm sharing with you, as I'm helping you to understand these universal teachings, and see this as a bridge to be able to help you to now connect things that you might have learned in other traditions, and now you can see some of those connections as you're moving into Buddhist teachings. But at the same time, understand that the Buddhist teachings are very unique and unique to themselves because he lived during a time where he was able to speak very clearly, very precisely, and very concisely because he reached this enlightened mental state where his mind wasn't polluted by other things. He was able to share his teachings in a way that you could learn them, independently reflect on them and verify them, and then practice them to see the truth for yourself. And this is what I encourage everybody to do as they're embarking on their journey to enlightenment. Because we awoke to the natural law of gravity when we were growing up as well. At one time, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and we really struggled with this natural law. That we fell down, we hit our head, we busted our elbow, we knocked over glasses and broke things that were either ours or our parents, and we might have cried and been really upset because we were making unwise decisions that led to unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law of gravity, and we have fully awoke. We gained the wisdom of this natural law, and then we were able to make wise decisions that led to wholesome results. And now at this point in our life, we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, ride motorcycles or motorbikes, we can get on airplanes, we can do all kinds of things because we learned to tie our shoes, we learned to look at the surface of the street where we're walking, we learned to not jump around and bop around with such excitement all the time, we learned to be somewhat calm as we're walking through various terrain. So we learned various things about this natural law of gravity that our mind was able to learn, independently reflect on, and then practice to awaken to this wisdom, and now we make wiser decisions based on that natural law. And the same thing is occurring with the natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught, is that the unenlightened mind is struggling and having difficulties because it's unaware of these natural laws. And because of that, the mind experiences sadness or anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings and others are experienced in the unenlightened mind because it's just lacking wisdom of these natural laws. It hasn't yet had the opportunity to awaken to these natural laws. But because these various teachers, Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, and others, were awake to a certain degree, they tapped into some of these natural laws and they described them in their own way in their own collection of teachings. But they might have described it through belief or placing God as a central figure in their teachings, or they might have taught a certain amount of fear about God or being judged, or you might have been guilted or shamed or feared and maybe going to a really bad place after you die. The Buddha didn't do any of these things as he taught. Instead, he attained this peaceful and joyful mental state on his own, and then he spent the rest of his life from the age of 35 to 80 to helping people understand what it took for him to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. And the same things that he did in order to train his mind to get to this enlightened mental state, those are the same exact things that are going to work for you to be able to get to that enlightened mental state and experience the peace and the joy. And some of those things you might have been exposed to in various traditions or various teachings as you've been growing up. So in terms of why we might be interested to understand the universal teachings is that it's going to help you to observe that many traditions of teachings are essentially founded in these same universal teachings. So this way, when you're thinking about if you maybe have learned Christianity or Judaism or Hindu teachings or Muslim teachings or anything else that's out there, and you're starting to now learn the teachings of the Buddha, you don't have to feel like you're turning your back on those teachings or what you learned over those years or your family and their traditions. Instead, you can just look at it as a stepping stone or the next step in your staircase to higher and higher consciousness and being able to train your mind. So these teachings are here for you to be able to help you move forward in life and develop the mind to be able to learn and practice on this path of life to become this improved individual, where there's this continuation of learning, which is really started from when we're in our mom's womb. That when we're in the womb, we're constantly learning. And when we come out, we're constantly learning. We're learning all throughout our life. And if we ever get to a point where we stop learning, then we're really relegating ourselves to lots of challenges and difficulties in life. But by continuing to learn and evolve as a human being, we can experience improved ways of life. We can experience new and improved ways of making decisions and leading to improved results. So our entire life, we've been exposed to various teachings that we've just been gradually evolving as human beings. And now this may be that next step in your evolution as a human being to be able to learn something that you haven't been exposed to before. But it's important to understand that not only do you need to learn teachings, but you need to practice them too. That's where the real transformation is occurring. So even though in this particular class we don't meditate prior to sharing the teachings, and pretty much all the other classes that I teach, whether they're online or at the temple, I'm doing some amount of meditation. Particularly at the temple, we meditate almost every single class at the very first thing we do in the morning. So it would be really wise to be sure that you're developing your practice around these universal teachings, the Eightfold Path, the meditation, and all those other things, and just see that as an evolution as you're learning and growing as a human being, and that you can use these teachings as a bridge, that you're now incorporating the teachings of the Buddha into your existing understanding of your life practice, but understanding that certain things that you're learning about the teachings of the Buddha are going to be very different than what you've learned in other traditions if you've been exposed to those other things. And another reason why you might be interested to learn the universal teachings is that if all else fails and you have difficulty remembering the Eightfold Path and all those individual steps and what to practice in those steps, you can always remember the universal teachings, and practicing those will ensure that you're not causing harm. Even though I exposed the students and taught you guys the Eightfold Path over 3 consecutive classes at the beginning of this group learning program, we're going to be learning those things again in this group learning program. We're going to be revisiting them in future classes. And you're not going to be able to learn it once and then practice it effortlessly. That you're going to need to gradually revisit that Eightfold Path and dial it in closer and closer over a consistent long-term period. And as you're doing that and you're bringing your Eightfold Path up and running, which is going to completely eliminate all your discontentedness, there might be some rare occasions where you're kind of stuck and you're not quite sure what right speech was or what right action or some other teaching that is shared on the Eightfold Path. You might not remember that, and you might need to consult that book or that class a few hours later or the next day. But if in the moment you can remember these universal teachings, which there's 3 of them, if you can remember these and you can practice these, then you'll be able to ensure that you're not causing any harm, and therefore you will experience wholesome results. There won't be any unwholesome results that are generated. So let me share with you what the 3 universal teachings are and how you can use these to your benefit in life. Essentially, the first universal teaching that I saw across all the different traditions that I've ever been exposed to is this universal love for all beings, which in the teachings of the Buddha, he would describe this as loving kindness and compassion for all beings. That it's important that we have love and kindness, or in the Pali language, metta, which is active goodwill for all beings without judgment, having this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Oftentimes what we're taught that I'm not going to respect you until you respect me, or I'm not going to respect somebody else until they respect me. And the same thing comes with love or kindness. Sometimes people are like, well, I'm not going to be kind until they're kind with me first. But if everybody in the world was doing the same thing, then nobody would be kind to anybody, or nobody would be respectful to anybody, because everybody's just holding back, waiting for other people to be respectful or waiting for other people to be kind. So in order to practice the universal love for all beings and loving kindness, you would need to be able to do that without judgment, where you have this active goodwill towards all beings. Oftentimes in our life, we have craving, desire, attachment that is masquerading as love. That oftentimes an individual will put their expectations on another person, or try to control another person through the way that you interact with a person. And what you come to understand on the path to enlightenment is any discontent feelings that you're experiencing are being caused by your own mind due to craving, desire, attachment. But because the unenlightened mind has this unknowing of true reality, or this ignorance, then because of its wrong view and not understanding that your own mind is causing your discontent feelings, when you experience getting what you want or getting your expectations met, you get these pleasant feelings where the mind is happy, excited, elated, thrilled, or euphoric. Or if you don't get what you want, and you have certain cravings or expectations in the mind, then you'll experience those painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then when the mind has this wrong view, it will oftentimes blame other people or blame the situation, that it's someone else that's causing you to be angry. And that's where the unenlightened mind will tend to push that person away. This is called aversion. Or one will be bitter and harsh and hostile with that person. Or you will put your expectations on that person and try to get them to do things your way. But doing any of that isn't love. It's not loving kindness. Oftentimes we think that if our mom or dad or our children or our life partner is struggling with something, if we just rush in and we make a bunch of decisions for people, then we can sort out what's going on, and then that's our way of expressing love. But what an individual needs to come to realize is that as part of practicing true love and this loving kindness, that you need to make space for people to make their own decisions. Of course, children need to be guided much more closely, but when it comes to like life partners or siblings or parents or neighbors or friends, oftentimes if an individual is struggling and seeing their family members or their friends that are struggling in life, you might experience painful feelings. And you might think that the solution to this is rush in and make a bunch of decisions for that person in order to solve the problem. But that doesn't solve the problem, because the real problem that this individual is experiencing is they're lacking wisdom and they're not understanding how to actually make a wise decision that would lead to wholesome results. So if you rush in and start making decisions for the people and trying to orchestrate things in order to ensure that your feelings aren't being experienced in a painful way and you're not having those painful feelings, then you're not seeing the true problem, which is this person doesn't have wisdom. And what's the best thing to do in these situations to practice loving kindness and have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well is to step back and provide guidance, provide support, provide advice if the person's mind is open to it. And understanding that sometimes their mind might not be open to your advice. So you might need to ask them, Mom, I see you struggling with this. Would you like some advice? Or would you like some thoughts? Or would you like some ideas of how to improve that? And if mom says, yeah, sure, what do you got? You might share your ideas, you might share your thoughts. And she may or may not even take your ideas. She may do something completely opposite. Or when you ask her if she would like some thoughts or ideas, she might say, no, I'm not interested. And you're going to need to be comfortable with that and realize that mom has decided that she's going to go forward with whatever decisions that she's making. And that's part of loving an individual, where when we try to force an individual to do things our way, that's just your craving getting in the way. And you might think that that's an expression of love because you're trying to protect your mom or your dad or somebody else from some unfortunate situation. But they're going to feel like you're controlling them, and now they're not allowed to make decisions that are in their best interest, and this can put strain on a relationship. So in order to practice this active goodwill without judgment and this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, or this universal love for all beings, it's important to understand more and more what true love is. And we're going to be talking about this in chapter 15 when we get to that. We're going to be going into detail on this topic more so that you can see that rushing in to make decisions or putting your expectations on someone or trying to force somebody to do things your way isn't actually loving them. If you can get your craving, desire, attachment out of the way, then your true love can shine through more and more, where you just love somebody as they are and you offer them advice, you offer them suggestions, and if they're willing to listen and they're interested, then you share it with them without any expectation that they're going to actually do what you are suggesting. And understanding that sometimes they might need to struggle and they need to make maybe unwise decisions and experience unwholesome results in order to be able to learn. In fact, that's probably the way that you gained a certain amount of wisdom, is that you made unwise decisions, it produced a certain unwholesome result, and you learned certain wisdom. And you can foresee that this person is headed for difficult times, and you're trying to protect them from that. But they might not see that as clearly as you. And you may not even know all the variables in this person's life. Only each individual person would know the complete detail of all the variables of any particular decision that they're about to make. But oftentimes when there's ego in the mind, then the mind thinks that I know better than mom, or I know better than dad or brother or sister. But it's important for you to understand that whenever anybody is meeting a certain challenge, that they're the only ones that know 100% of all the variables that they're experiencing, and they're the only ones that can implement a decision that they're going to be comfortable with. And if that decision is implemented in an unwise way and they experience unwholesome results, well, that just might be part of the learning experience that they need in order to be able to cultivate wisdom that you once cultivated. And if you're sharing information and they're either not interested in what you're sharing, or if they listen to what you're sharing and then they do something opposite of that, you're going to need to get comfortable with not agreeing with what everybody does. Oftentimes we disagree with people's decisions, and then we feel like because we disagree with them and they disagree with us, that we can't be friends anymore. Or I can't love this person because they did something that I disagree with. It's important to learn that disagreement isn't disrespect. And because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean that you need to stop loving them. You can get to a point where you understand that disagreement is part of natural life, that the universal truth of impermanence tells us that it's not possible for you to agree with every single decision that your parents make, or your siblings, or your life partner, or your children. You're not going to agree with every one of their decisions, but you can disagree with the decision that they made and still love the person. And this takes work for you to be able to build up to be able to do this, where you can practice active goodwill without judging them. Even though they're making different decisions than you, you can still love them. And of course they're making different decisions. The universal truth of impermanence tells us that, but also if you understand that you've had different experiences than the other person, you've experienced different things in life, and due to your unique experiences in your mom or dad or brothers or sisters or life partners, unique experiences in life, their decisions are going to be different than yours. This is just a matter of fact that it's going to happen this way. And when it does, it's helpful for you to just be able to see that as impermanence, that it's not disrespect, and that you can still love this person even though you disagree with their decisions. So there's various things that you need to learn when it comes to all your different relationships to then be able to practice universal love for all beings, which involves loving kindness and this genuine interest in seeing them be well, and understanding that in order for them to be well, it's going to need to come from their decisions. You can't make a bunch of decisions for somebody in order for them to be well. Each one of us are experiencing the results of the decisions that we make. And it's not possible for you to make decisions for others and completely help them with every last little facet of their life. There are certain things that you'll be able to support them and encourage them and help them with as they're open to that help. But in order for somebody to truly improve anything that they're experiencing in their life, they need to cultivate wisdom and make wiser decisions, just like you're doing as part of your journey to enlightenment. And not everybody's willing to do that work in this life. There's some people who aren't willing to actually do the work of cultivating wisdom. The ego might be too high, where when the ego is really high, when there's arrogance and pride and boastfulness in the mind, someone might think that they're already perfect and they're not interested in learning anything new. And you're going to need to be comfortable with that and let go of wanting everyone to be a certain way. And that's part of practicing loving kindness and having this active goodwill and practicing a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Another aspect of universal love for all beings is to practice compassion, which is in Pali we refer to as karuna. This is concern for the misfortune of others. If you're finding that when you see somebody in unfortunate circumstances, if you worry or you have stress or you have anxiety or your mind is just kind of obsessively wanting to help this person, then there's potentially a craving, desire, attachment there in the mind where the mind's longing and yearning for everybody to be a certain way. But also if you find yourself indifferent, where when you see somebody experiencing unfortunate circumstances, that you're indifferent to the difficulties and struggles that they have, that's on opposite sides. That's not the middle. Compassion is what is going to help you bring this to the middle, where you can practice this universal love for all beings, but doing so with compassion, where you have concern for people's misfortune and you're potentially practicing generosity in certain situations in order to help them. But at the same time, you understand that in order for that person to truly experience improvement in their life, they're going to need to cultivate wisdom and make wiser decisions. And you can't give that to them. You can offer them a book, you can offer them a link to a YouTube video, you can invite them to a course or a retreat or an online program to help them learn certain teachings that will improve their life. You can offer them guidance and suggestions and advice, but ultimately each individual needs to decide that they're going to have an open mind and they're going to then learn about any particular set of teachings and then implement those teachings in their life to then be able to experience improved results. But when the mind is longing, yearning, and craving, wanting to rush in and fix things for people, then when things don't go the way that the mind wants, an individual can get very angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed in these situations. So it's practicing loving kindness, which is going to bring up that genuine interest in seeing beings be well. And as you do that, if you overextend that and go too far into craving, desire, attachment, you might find that you're discontent when you see the misfortune of others. So you need to throttle that back and bring it to the middle where you have concern. But also, if you go too far to the other side, you might be indifferent when you see other people meeting with unfortunate circumstances. So this loving kindness and compassion together, coupling it together and practicing it together, you can bring the mind to the middle where you're able to have this active goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing beings be well. And when people aren't well, you have concern for their misfortune. But you have the wisdom to understand that their misfortune is based on the decisions that they're making, and only them, they're the only ones who can cultivate wisdom and then improve the decision making in their life. We can provide opportunities for people to receive basic necessities that they need to sustain their life, or various resources to be able to cultivate wisdom, but each individual has to choose to do that work for themselves. We can't do that work for them. So the only way for them to be able to improve their life is to stand up on their own feet and decide that enough is enough, and they're interested in cultivating wisdom. And again, not everybody's going to be willing to do that in this life or would be capable of doing that, depending on what's going on with their body and with their mind and with their life situation. So we need to get comfortable with being able to have this universal love for all beings, but realizing that some beings are going to be unwell in this world. And where we can help, but when we're not able to help, we just understand that we need to provide for our own basic necessities to sustain our life. Where if we overextended ourselves due to craving, desire, attachment, we wouldn't have what we need in order to survive and provide for basic necessities in our life. So this is the first aspect of universal love for all beings, is having this loving kindness and compassion for all beings and being able to understand what that is and then being able to practice it. There's a meditation that I'm teaching now on Wednesdays. It's a 4-part series called Loving Kindness Meditation, where it helps to cultivate the loving kindness in the mind so that you'll be able to practice something like universal love for all beings. This Wednesday is the second part of the 4-part series. And if you haven't seen the first part, it's recorded in Facebook, YouTube, and on our podcast. You're able to access that and be able to learn how to practice loving kindness meditation. Because not only will it help you practice loving kindness with others, but it will help you to practice loving kindness with yourself too. Sometimes inside one's own mind, there can be negative self-talk. You can be degrading yourself or diminishing yourself, and this hinders you from being able to experience success and fulfillment and satisfaction in the world, because you might be constantly judging yourself and degrading yourself. So this loving kindness meditation, not only will it help you to cultivate loving kindness for others, but it'll help you to cultivate loving kindness for this being who you are right now. Then, with this loving kindness and compassion, you would like to develop the wisdom to understand, to practice doing no harm. Because whenever you do harm, any harm that you put out will come back to you based on the natural law of Gotama. So if you're learning the Eightfold Path and the teachings of the Buddha, you'll see in his second step of the Eightfold Path is called right intention. There's three aspects to right intention, or the right thinking, or the right thought. One is to practice the intention of renunciation. Then there's the practice of non-ill will and harmlessness. Practicing non-ill will is the same thing as saying goodwill, which is loving kindness. So in order to practice and develop your life practice towards the attainment of enlightenment, you would need to be practicing this active goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing others be well. And this is an intention or a thinking or a thought that you develop in the mind through meditation. And then this moves into practice of harmlessness, where you practice the intention of not being interested in causing harm to others, being incapable or disinterested in causing harm. This is harmlessness. Because if you're looking to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, that will be very challenging to do if you're continuing to put harm out into the world. As you're having the intention to cause harm, and you might be choosing to cause harm through your moral conduct, that harm is just going to come back to you. You might have aggression and hostility or bitterness around you because that might be what you're putting out. And as you put that out to others, then it's going to come back to you. So you would like to develop the intention of non-ill will and harmlessness, and then bring that through in your practice of moral conduct, where you can be a good moral person through practicing the moral conduct in the Eightfold Path. The Buddha shares right speech, right action, and right livelihood, where you can learn the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect, or action and result. Not the mystical, magical black cloud or anything like that. That's not what the natural law of Gotama is. The natural law of Gotama isn't punishment and rewards. It's the results of your decisions. It's cause and effect, or action and result. And when you can see more and more clearly that what you're experiencing in life is the results of your decisions, then you might realize that even though you might think you have the best intentions in the world, you might think that you're speaking in the very best way, that your actions and other things are just super great, you can realize that the unwholesome things that are coming back to you are there to teach you that you're not doing things in a way that would be wise, that the natural law of Gotama is our most unbiased teacher. If you're experiencing unwholesome results, like maybe you and your life partner argue, or you get irritated at each other, or maybe your children are disrespectful perhaps, or having difficulties in certain parts of their life and struggling in a relationship with you, or maybe your coworkers or your boss and you're having difficulties in your relationships. This isn't because you're necessarily a bad person or you've done anything wrong. It's due to a lack of wisdom, that the mind doesn't understand that natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect. That even though we might think our intentions are the very best and our speech is the very best, if we haven't studied the natural law of Gotama closely, then we're out there making decisions with a lack of wisdom. And when we have a lack of wisdom, we will tend to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So what you're looking to accomplish, among other things on this path to enlightenment, is to develop the understanding of the natural law of Gotama around your moral conduct, so that now when you're practicing in the world, you can have this universal love for all beings, where you have this genuine interest in seeing beings be well, this concern for their misfortune, that you practice doing no harm, where you have the intention of non-ill will and harmlessness, and then that moves into your moral conduct, where you can be a good moral person with the knowledge and the wisdom of the natural law of Gotama, practicing things like right speech, right action, and right livelihood, understanding that your personality and your character is going to come through in all of those things, but underlying all of that is a wisdom of this natural law of Gotama, so that when you're speaking, your intentions in your speech are syncing up. Oftentimes we might have really pure intentions, but our speech and our actions don't sync up with that. And when we put out our speech and actions in the world, it comes back to us and we realize that we made some unwise decisions. So if you can be learning as you will in this group learning program, and then dialing in and practicing closer and closer all the various steps of the Eightfold Path, which include right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, and you really focus in on your moral conduct, you'll see by bringing the harmful things down and eliminating those harmful things that we do just because of a lack of wisdom in the unenlightened state. When you eliminate those, then you're eliminating the harm that you're causing in the world, and now you'll experience more and more wholesomeness coming back to you, and understanding that this is going to be a gradual process. So these are the three universal teachings that I see universal across all traditions, but I'm explaining it here in terms of the teachings of the Buddha. But you can see even in teachings like Jesus Christ, like I mentioned, he taught love thy neighbor, right? Well, this is loving kindness and compassion. He taught all these different teachings, and so did Prophet Muhammad, so does Hindu teachings, Judaism, and all these things. You'll see these common themes among all these traditions. And understanding how to practice these on a day-by-day basis is what will produce results in your life. And you'll be able to then use these in situations where maybe you can't quite 100% remember certain aspects of the teachings of the Buddha. As you're transitioning over to understanding more and more of his teachings, these can be there for you as kind of an underlying guide. That if you can remember universal love for all beings, do no harm, and be a good moral person, being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all your interactions, this will really help you to start producing more and more wise decisions that will then produce wholesome results in your life. And then as you go forward on the path to enlightenment, you can be dialing in more and more of the Eightfold Path so that you get to the point where you do know what right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood is among all the other steps. So far, we've taken a pretty deep dive into those individual steps and others, but you're going to need some more learning on those, whether it's in this program or other programs, whether it's various courses or retreats that you might attend, learning with the words of the Buddha exactly what he taught with the Eightfold Path, and then learning how to bring that into your life is what's ultimately going to help you extinguish all your discontent feelings and improve the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. So this is everything that I had to share with you guys today. It's just a very short teaching. This chapter is a very short chapter. I think it only takes maybe 15 minutes or so to read, if I remember correctly. And remember, you have the book that you can download from the website. You can take that book and go print it. You can order it on Amazon through printed versions or Kindle versions. You can even use the audiobook version, which is on our podcast and our YouTube channel. In the YouTube version and the podcast, you can actually read it on the screen because it's showing you the pages of the book, and I'm reading it at the same time, which helps to improve comprehension. So if you haven't read this chapter yet, it can be a really nice bridge for you to move over to the teachings of the Buddha and understand what it is that you're moving towards, and understanding that it's a bridge from other traditions rather than you turning your back on other things that you might have learned in the past, because all these things are contributing to you becoming a better and better human being in this life so that you can improve your relationships and have an improved way of life. So I'll just open up to any and all questions that you guys might have related to what I've been sharing so far. And this, as I mentioned, is everything that I have to share with you today. If you have questions, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. So here we have a question coming in from Steve on Zoom. It says, "Teacher, at times I feel like I am solidly on the path by practicing the teachings, the path, meditation. I am content, at peace with joy. Then unexpectedly, I become angry or discontent. It's like my mind is rebelling against Buddha's teachings. I think that over time this is getting better, but still frequently flares up. Is this to be expected?" Yes, because you can't just snap your fingers and instantly transform the mind. You've got pollutions that are deeply rooted in the mind, And what you're doing is you're gradually chipping away at that. You're gradually bringing up your wisdom and your wise decisions, which improves the wholesome results that you're experiencing. And you're gradually bringing down more and more of the unwise decisions and the unwholesome results. But because you still have craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, which is called the unknowing of true reality, these are the three poisons, the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires, which we're going to be studying in chapter 8. Because those are still there, because you still have cravings in your mind, it's very easy for the mind to be annoyed or frustrated or angry. So you haven't cleared out the mind and fully purified it of all of its cravings and all those 10 fetters. Remember, it took the Buddha 6 years to be able to do that. So it's going to take you some time. And it doesn't mean it's going to take you 6 years. It could take you less than that. Remember, the Buddha was doing it by himself without any teachers or any guides. So by having a teacher to help you, this can really accelerate your ability to improve the mind. But you shouldn't put any time frame on what you're expecting to purify the mind. But it's only been 4 weeks. So if you're experiencing some peace and joy, kind of like some windows of time where the mind is peaceful and joyful, excellent. That's great. That shows you that your mind has the potential to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. And now what you'd like to do is expand that for longer and longer periods of time. You might find that certain relationships you really struggle. Maybe if you have a life partner, if you have children, if you have your parents are still alive, or if you have brothers or sisters, these relationships that you're really close to, there tends to be deep attachment in these relationships, and you might find that you can get easily angered or frustrated. You can easily use wrong speech in those situations because there's craving, desire, attachment in those relationships. So you need to be able to stay consistent with your meditation, with practicing generosity. And remember, there's breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity to eliminate the cravings. And then there's loving kindness meditation to be able to eliminate the anger, the hatred, the ill will, and those lesser aversions. Even like the slightest dislike is eliminated from the enlightened mind. Where right now, an individual might have certain people that they dislike for any number of reasons. This is because of the pollution in one's own mind. So it's going to take time to transition that, and you're going to need to gradually build up your practice. So at this point, if you're meditating with breathing mindfulness meditation regularly and you're practicing generosity as you're able to share your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is expected or required at any given situation, and without any expectation of anything in return, this is a good place to start. And now what you'd like to start doing is bringing in the loving kindness meditation and then starting to practice more and more loving kindness through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and start to develop your moral conduct. This is where I would encourage all of you guys to be focusing on right now, is developing your breathing mindfulness meditation and your loving kindness meditation. That's something that you can be working on building up 2 or 3 sessions per day, gradually expanding that. And then building your generosity and your ability to practice loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions. And dialing in right intention, right speech, and right action, as well as right livelihood if you're not practicing right livelihood. And always keeping in mind right view, that if you're experiencing irritation or loneliness or boredom or frustration or any of those other discontent feelings, always look within to try to figure out what is the cravings, desires, attachments that are causing this. We're going to be talking about this in chapter 12 and 13, where I'm going to be giving you guys some guidance on how to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. But yes, Steve, your mind's going to take some time to transition. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and get to enlightenment in such a short period of time. But if you're getting some glimpses of the peace and the joy, this is very encouraging that this early that you're already experiencing that. So keep being consistent with it. It's going to be something you do consistently over the course of your life, and then gradually you will wear away the conditions that are causing the anger to arise, namely the craving, desire, attachment. Looks like we have a question coming in from Miriam, and I see your thank you there, Steve. You're very welcome. Let's see, Miriam in Zoom is saying, I find it easier to practice at home. I am currently traveling and staying at a friend's house, and I find it difficult to find time for my practice
and be a good host, help with house chores, accept their invitations to teach me cooking, or visit a new place. I feel I need to put my teachings and meditation on pause or squeeze them in at times that don't really work for me. How to adjust. So in order to develop your practice and be able to get to the enlightened mind, there needs to be consistency, like which you're cluing into. You understand that you need this consistency over a long-term period of time. So you're developing a life practice where you're able to practice these things and you know that it's wise to do so, which it seems like you do. Where now you might just need to start communicating with some people around you, and you need to learn how to say no without saying no. If you need to share with people, hey, I'm really having a great time staying at your home, but I'm going to need some time in the morning and the evenings to be able to practice meditation. So I hope you guys can understand that I'm going to be taking some time in the morning and the evenings to do some meditation. And oftentimes the mind feels obligated to go along with what people are doing or what they're asking you to do because you're staying in their home. But you can help them to understand that you're starting to meditate and you're building up your practice and you're doing these things, and it's really important for you. And then if they're not comfortable with that, then that gives you an indication that this person maybe is not practicing loving kindness with you, where they're willing to allow you to make your own choices. But I have a feeling your friends and family will be more than understanding to understand that you're practicing these things if you just let them know. Oftentimes we feel hesitant to just let somebody know, like, hey, you'd like to do something in the morning? Okay, that sounds great. What time? And if they say, 7 a.m., we're going to leave, then you can say, well, will it be possible if we left at 8 o'clock? I have some things I'd like to do in the morning. What would we need to do to maybe leave at 8 o'clock instead of 7? Rather than just accepting what somebody says, you can have a nice conversation where there's a mutual agreement on these types of things, where you might be hesitant to have those conversations, maybe out of fear of damaging a relationship or something like that. But learning how to have conversations and compromise and meeting in the middle, this is something that an enlightened being is going to need to be able to cultivate in order to get to enlightenment. That you're going to need to be able to use right intention, right speech, and right action to be able to conversate with people and build harmony. And in situations where you need to communicate, that you're going to be doing some meditation or learning online or reading some books, your hosts who are hosting you, or if you're hosting other people in your home, they should be more than understanding of that, because this is your life practice that you're developing. Whereas if you are putting it on hold in this situation, then that means it hasn't been really fully integrated into your life. I traveled last year in 2002 for about 6 or 7 weeks on the road, and I made sure that I was meditating each day. Of course, there was a day here or there where I wasn't able to meditate based on certain things that were happening, but I made sure that in the evening that I got some meditation in. So when you're on vacation, you might not be as consistent with your meditation practice, but at least you can still do some meditation, and you can ensure that your host or the people that you're hosting understand that that's what you're doing. And then when things go back to your normal schedule, you can ramp your meditation practice back up. But what you would like to do is be able to fully get into the normal routine of being able to meditate regularly and see that as part of your life now, and that anybody who's in your life is going to need to be aware of that. Because if you're going to now be meditating all the way out through the rest of your life, if you put it on hold when you're around certain people, then you haven't really fully integrated it yet. So it's wise to just let people know what you're doing, and I'm sure that they would be more than willing to understand that and make accommodations for you guys to come together at a time where it's more convenient for you. All right, let me see if we have any questions here on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you. You're right on all aspects. I will try to follow these suggestions. Oh, you're welcome, Miriam. Pleased to help you. Okay, I see someone saying hello from Poland. Welcome. Nice to see you guys here online. That was from YouTube. Let's see if we have any questions coming in on Facebook. I'm not seeing anything there other than a Y from Albert. Nice to see you online, Albert. He's living here in Chiang Mai, so nice to see you, Albert. All right.
I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So what I'll do then is just in class by thanking you all for joining for today's class. This is just a really short chapter, as I mentioned, to be able to help you guys bridge over from any traditions that you might have been learning in the past, or if you haven't been learning any teachings at all, you can see that these three themes are really common and central amongst many traditions in the world. And thank you for choosing to learn the teachings. We're now starting from the very beginning of the book. And if you haven't downloaded the book or printed it or gotten a printed version or Kindle version, those are all available for you guys. You would like to create the opportunity for yourself to read about 10 or 15 minutes a day now, all the way through the group learning program, rather than sitting and reading for a significant period of time, like an hour or two. It's better to just do 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes a day at most, along with your meditation. This can be really helpful for you to really solidify it in the mind. Next week, we're going to be in chapter 2, which is titled Why Study Gautama Buddha's Teachings. Here we're going to have a very interesting class where we're going to have a conversation together and more of an interactive discussion where the people are in Zoom and the people who are in YouTube and Facebook, we can have a nice discussion about why is it that you've chosen to be able to learn the teachings of the Buddha. And we can start to get to know each other because we're about 6 weeks into the group learning program. This is a great time to start meeting people, getting to know each other, and understanding a bit about why you've come to this particular program in the teachings of the Buddha and what's motivated you to learn and develop. Some of you guys that have been learning the teachings of the Buddha, you might decide to share some of the improvements that you've made since learning and practicing the teachings. This can be part of our sharing and getting to know each other next week. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be in part 2 of our 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. Keep in mind that all these classes are recorded either in Facebook, YouTube, or on the podcast. So as you aren't able to make certain classes, you can always attend live, of course, through the live stream, either in the morning at 9 a.m. Thai time or in the evening, 9 p.m. Thai time, because I'm live streaming the class from the temple and the one that I do here at home. But then also, if you can't make those live classes, they're all recorded and available to you. So now we have 6 months of learning of going through this book gradually, and then you can be working on developing your meditation practice and your practice of generosity and loving kindness, as well as the moral conduct. And this will gradually help you to ease into the teachings of the Buddha, because over time, I'm going to be adding in more and more teachings to be able to help you. But you've got a period of about maybe 5 or 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks here, where there isn't going to be a significant amount of new things that are going to be taught, but it's going to be going deeper into some topics that we've already been discussing. And then by the time we get to chapter 8, there's going to be things that you haven't really been exposed to. Even these chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they're things that we're going to be discussing, but you've kind of had a little bit of an introduction to them already, but we're going to be going deeper into them so that you can get more insight into actually how to develop your practice. So if you're doing the work at home and you're also learning through the books and the classes or the replays, you'll gradually start seeing the improvements to the condition of your mind in your life. And as you need help, you can ask questions in class. You can post them in the Facebook group. You can send private messages or emails to me, or you can schedule personal guidance through our website where we can meet in Zoom one-on-one, and I can help you understand how to apply the teachings to very specific challenges that you might be facing. So thank you all for joining for today's class. We'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee khap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.